what you want to fill in all the archaeological details, but this is a synagogue behind us. It's a first century synagogue, which is significant because that is when Jesus was walking this area. And if I can read to you from Luke chapter 4 and verse 14 and 15. It says, "Then Jesus returned in the power of the Spirit to Galilee, and news of him went through all the surrounding region, and he taught in their" what?
Synagogue.
Taught in their synagogue. So there's a synagogue being glorified by all. Skip down to verse, let's pick it up at verse 42. We'll read to verse 44. "Now when it was day, he departed and went to a deserted place, and the crowd sought him and came to him and tried to keep him from leaving them. But he said to them, I must preach the kingdom of God to the other cities also, because for this purpose I've been sent." And he was preaching in the
Synagogue.
All right, so this is, we have every reason to think that he would have made it here. Now, if we make our way over to Matthew chapter 15, last verse. Chapter 15, of course, we're coming out of the feeding of the 4,000 there, right? We talked about the Syrophoenician woman, the feeding of the 4,000 in the region of the Decapolis. Verse 39, "And he sent the multitude away, got into the boat, and came to the region of Magdala." So, he taught in all the synagogues, and what we're going to find is that as we move into chapter 16, the Pharisees and the Sadducees knew exactly who he was, right? I mean, the scribes, the Pharisees and scribes, I think it said. No, Sadducees too. And so, you got the temple here, you got Jesus coming from the water. In my mind, of course, we don't know, but here's the synagogue, and I can just imagine Jesus walking out and getting apprehended, like right there, right in the walkway. We don't know, but this is, I played the scene out in my mind. They know he's coming, they meet him, and they begin to have this conversation. So chapter 16, verse 1. "Then the Pharisees and Sadducees came, and testing him, asked that he would show them a sign from heaven." He had already shown so many signs, right? But they don't want to believe. They answered and said to them, "When it's evening, you say, it will be fair weather, for the sky is red. And in the morning, it will be foul weather today, for the sky is red and threatening. Hypocrites! You know how to discern the face of the sky, but you cannot discern the signs of the times. A wicked and adulterous generation seeks after a sign, and no sign shall be given to it except the sign of the prophet Jonah." So he's beginning to look to his death, right? He's beginning to give that little indication. I'm going to die, and I'm going to be in the earth for 3 days. He left them and departed. There's a few other interactions that take place. Bethsaida, and then they go up into Caesarea Philippi, verse 13. And I'm not going to talk about this too much here, but he came to the region of Caesarea Philippi. Have this in your mind. He was here, went to Bethsaida, and then he heads further north up to Caesarea Philippi. This is where Peter makes his confession. But I want you to look at verse 21 of chapter 16. It says, "From that time, Jesus began to show his disciples that he must go to Jerusalem and suffer many things from the elders and the chief priests and scribes, and be killed and be raised the third day." Now, Peter wants to give him a little lesson on what he really should be doing, and we'll talk about that more. But that phrase, "from that time," turn back to Matthew chapter 4. We'll find a similar phrase here. Matthew chapter 4. And
17.
Yes. So this is obviously, it's right at the beginning of Jesus' ministry. And it says, "From that time, he began to preach and to say, repent, for the kingdom of heaven is at hand." And so this is the message that he's preaching, and he sends his disciples out preaching this message, right? And when the disciples went out, Jesus told them to go to preach the kingdom. But what did he tell them as the disciples were traveling around Israel? What did he tell them not to do?
Take money and all that.
Okay, money.
Weapons.
Weapons. What were some of the other things he told them? In their message, make sure you don't share what?
Share with the Gentiles.
Don't share with the Gentiles. Because this is for the children of Israel. It's the beginning of Jesus' ministry. He's preaching the kingdom. Are there promises of a kingdom to the nation of Israel? The Old Testament is full of the promises to the kingdom. And I think sometimes in our mind, we know history, we know what happened, we know that Jesus was rejected. We know what the Apostle Paul says, blindness in part has happened to the nation of Israel. And we jump forward, and most of us probably here are Gentiles, and we think of the gospel that's been given. But I want you to just think for a moment about two missions and two commissions. And here's the first one there in Matthew chapter 4, verse 17. He begins to preach of the kingdom. Now, while he's out there, Israel ends up rejecting him. And I want to just suggest to you a thought that what happens here is a significant moment when the offer of the kingdom. There's a few other events that take place, but it's this where they're really testing him and saying, who are you? Show us a sign. We don't really believe who you say you are. Show us something. And then they head to Caesarea. There's a confession that he is the Christ. But from that time forward, he begins to look to his suffering. And they're not sent out anymore into a nation to go preaching. And it's all now looking forward to what's going to happen in Jerusalem. The second commission is what? It's what we know as the Great Commission. And the Great Commission has this one thing that is very distinct from the first commission that he gave to them. The first commission was don't go to the Gentiles, right? The second commission is go to begin in Jerusalem, Judea, Samaria, and what?
The ends of the earth.
Take it to the ends of the earth. Take it to the Gentiles. So we're very familiar with that commission. But this is what I believe. We know what happens historically, but there was an offer of the kingdom of Jesus. The nation rejected his offer. They rejected him. And I believe that what took place here in this town began to change that trajectory. And we're going to see that he begins to now just look forward to the cross. So if you follow it out, read through Matthew, check it out on your own. But now it's just looking forward to what's going to happen at the cross and how he's going to suffer. And you even see this when they ask for the sign, he begins to start talking about his suffering. No sign but the sign of Jonah. And so it's my belief that here in this town is where Jesus' ministry kind of pivoted. And we know that the kingdom is still going to be offered again. And that's what we talked about a little bit up at the Battle of Armageddon, the site of Megiddo, where the Battle of Armageddon is going to take place. And so just ponder that. Two missions. I'm sending you to the lost house of Israel. I'm sending you to the nations. Lost house of Israel, don't talk to the Gentiles. The commission to go to the world, talk to the whole world. And so we know that it was God's plan, even when the Israelites were called out of Egypt, that they were to be a priest of nations. They were to be a light to the Gentiles. And so the Lord gave them this special privilege. To them were committed the oracles of God. From them has come the Messiah. And so there is all of this wonderful blessing that has been given to the nation of Israel, and they rejected that. Obviously, many Jews did believe, many Jews are still believing, but in a national sense, as clearly expressed here with the leadership of the country, the leadership wanted nothing to do with him, and everywhere he met them, he was confronted by them. But this was a town that Jesus, we know he came to. Mary of Magdalene is from this place, one of the close followers of Jesus Christ, had tremendous faith in the Lord. But it's not hard to imagine the Lord standing in this area over here and teaching in the synagogues. And I don't know if you can just imagine those guys popping out, knowing that he's coming through. Aha, we've got something for you. Show us a sign. He's like, I'm not going to show you any sign. This is all you're going to get. And he looks to the suffering. Peter makes the confession, and then from that time forward, he's looking at what's going to happen in Jerusalem. So, kind of a pivotal point in the ministry of Jesus.
So, how far is Richmond from your church?
3 hours.
3 hours. How many times a year are you gonna visit Richmond?
2 or 3.
3 to 3. Anyone more? More. How many times are you gonna visit New York? Maybe once in a life. Maybe. So, when we think about the synagogue, if you translate the word synagogue in Hebrew, it does not mean the house of prayer. It means the house of gathering.
Can't hear you. Can't hear you. You got stuck and then you were gone.
How about now?
Yes.
Okay, so when we talk about, we translate the word synagogue in Hebrew, it's not the house of prayer, but Knesset. This is how you call it in Hebrew. It means the house of gathering. Why? Because a synagogue was everything that's connected to the public. Meaning, today when a couple gets married, they will choose several, they will explore several venues. At that time, there's only one place that the synagogue will take place. A wedding will take place, that will be in the synagogue. If the village needs to have a meeting about changing the pipes or investing some money, it will happen in a synagogue. If there's someone important comes to the village and wants to talk to everybody, it's in the synagogue. Meaning, it will be the only public place. Same as Capernaum, same as here. Now, why did I ask about Richmond? Because we just came back from the headquarters of Jesus. And this is not like Jerusalem that will be 7 days donkey ride and he might been there several times. This is 1 hour. I mean, how long did it take us to drive? 7 minutes? It's 1 hour donkey ride? That's meaning it's a place that you would visit several times. It would be part of it maybe day to day or once in a week. Exactly behind the place that we are just sitting. It's a synagogue from the 1st century. Let us say more. As Pastor said, just close your eyes and imagine him standing just behind. In the synagogue, we found this stone. What is this stone? This stone is the stone that they used to put the Torah on it. The Torah, we mean the first 5 books, Genesis, Exodus, and the Jewish people are reading it in the synagogue. Every synagogue, by the way, would face what direction? West, east, south? What do you think? Jerusalem. Exactly. Meaning every place, and there is every place that I go to Jerusalem. So this stone was actually that's a replica, and that's a replica. And I said, synagogue has another name, which we call it in Hebrew, Mikdash Me'at. If I translate it to the best modern translation, I would say a mini temple. Why? Because 3 times a year, Jewish people would gather in the temple, Feast of Tabernacle, Passover, and Pentecost. Huge people come, lots of people come from all over. From here to Jerusalem, it's around 7 days donkey ride. Then you have another 7 day of celebration in Jerusalem, and then another 7 days, meaning 21, 22 days to get to Jerusalem and back 3 times a year. I don't think anyone has enough vacation day to do it 3 times a year. Meaning, the people living here could not really make it to Jerusalem. Maybe not even every year, or as you go to New York, maybe once in a lifetime, several times in a lifetime. So they needed some kind of a substitute for people who are not coming to the temple. That was the synagogue, and that's why we call it a mini temple. Since it's kind of instead, or we always would like to be in the temple, part of the decoration, part of the things on the stone will be something that reminds us the temple. What can you see here? The menorah, one of the strongest signs of the temple. It was always, the idea is whenever the menorah is lightning, that means there is the presence of the Lord. Next to it, you can see all kinds of olive, where they used to put the olive oil, and all kinds of decoration arches that were at the temple. So when we go to the synagogue, we still would hope that we will be in Jerusalem. And how is this place connected to my childhood? So in Israel, there's a law. The law is that before you build a building, meaning when you are ready with all the blueprints and everything, and you did your house of the dream, the last person who will sign the approval that you can come already with bulldozer would be the antiquities authority. Why? Because maybe your dream house is just on the top of one of the most important excavation in Israel. So whenever, before you start building, there will come someone from the antiquities, and you need to pay for it. It doesn't come for free. He will come and he will do a survey, basically a basic survey, and to say it's okay, nothing here, or maybe the other way around. So there's a minister from Mexico, and they have also a place in Jerusalem. They decided to buy this place, and this place was named Hawaii Beach. And you see that soon we're going to see the picture. They had a nice swimming pool. It was a camping ground. I especially several times in my childhood, I came here with my family, and I remember the swimming pool, and then going into the Sea of Galilee, and that was the Hawaii Beach. They purchased it in order to establish here a retreat center, mainly for women empowerment because of Maria Magdalene, and they had all the blueprints ready. And then came the people from the Antiquities Authority. They did a very simple survey, and bingo, as we say. They found this synagogue, and of course, it's a very important synagogue, as I say, from the time of Jesus. And the ministry needed to change all their planning. And the whole retreat center, the hotel would be pushed to the side, and the retreat center more towards the waterfront. And that would be the place of Magdala. So on the way, come on, I want to show you the synagogue.